Before we start, just a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. Only 2% are subscribed. At 1,000 subscribers, I'll be posting a special video. The stairwell door slammed behind me and echoed. I'm Alex, 29, and my hands would not stop shaking. Fourth flight, I took 2 steps at once and kept breathing. Carpet smelled like old soap and stale coffee. My thumb hovered over the photo on my screen proof. I stopped outside the hallway camera and faced it. If this blew up, I wanted tape, not rumors. Elevator chimed once and a couple stared, then passed. I slipped my phone in my pocket and moved. My pulse hammered wild in my neck, no turning back. A maid cart blocked half the corridor near his door. I slid it aside just enough and ignored the glare. My keycard from home pressed cold against my palm. Not useful here, just habit, just grip. Knuckles ready, I raised my hand and listened. Laughter leaked through the door and clipped off. Low voices followed and a whisper cut the rest. I leaned in and the peephole darkened for a beat. The chain rattled once and then stilled. I knocked 3 times and planted my feet, decision made. Silence returned and I counted 4 breaths. The handle nudged like a test, then stopped. They'll leave, a man muttered, sharp and impatient. I pictured his jaw set like a dare. My fist hit the wood again and harder, open up. A step approached and the bolt slid back. I saw shadow under the door and toes inching. Housekeeping, I threw out and hated my voice. The chain stayed on and the gap waited. I bent to the opening and lowered mine. It's me. The chain lifted and metal scraped metal. Her face appeared first and then the hoodie followed. She blocked the view inside with her shoulder. 1 second of eye contact felt like a verdict. I walked past her with a breath, enough lies. The room smelled like shower steam and cologne. A jacket lay on a chair and a belt hung. He stood near the bathroom and gripped a watch. He tucked it away and tried for casual. I shut the door and leaned on it, cornered. Wrong room, he tossed out and reached for shoes. You picked mine, I answered and pointed at the phone. Screen glow still showed the last message. His eyes flicked to it and then to her. She swallowed and touched her wrist, tiny tremor. Walk out, I said and stepped aside. He squared his shoulders like this was a meeting. Get dressed first, she breathed and avoided my stare. He slid past but kept his chin up. I lifted the jacket and checked pockets, hotel key. He reached for it and I pulled back once. You paying for this? I asked with a shrug. He froze and measured me like a spreadsheet. Move, he said, and the word felt brittle. I opened the door and gestured, after you. He brushed my shoulder and tried not to flinch. The corridor swallowed him and the elevator chimed. I held the key until the doors closed. Then I placed it on the table between us. She stared at it like a trap, because it was. Talk, I said, and my jaw hurt. Her hands knotted the hoodie strings and then released. This is a mess, she whispered, barely above breath. Whose mess? I asked, voice even and slow. Her lips parted and then shut, new storm coming. My phone vibrated again and lit the room. Same number, new line, a careless heart and a time. I turned the screen toward her and waited. Her shoulders dropped like a confession without words. I slid the phone face down, now we move. I locked the door and pointed at the bed. Sit, my thumb hit record and the timer started. Call him on speaker, I added, breath steady. She stared at the phone like it burned, then tapped. His voice filled the room, flat and clipped. Emergency, she said, fingers twisting the cord of her hoodie. Did you tell him? He asked, a touch annoyed. I moved closer and let the silence answer, come back. Meet me in the lobby now, I said into the line. Breath on the other end, then a low curse. The call cut, the timer kept counting seconds. Good, I said and pocketed the proof trap set. She stood, arms tight across her chest, eyes shiny. You're scaring me, came out as a shaky whisper. Then don't lie again, I opened the hallway. We're finishing this downstairs, I added now. We walked to the lift without touching once. She pressed the button and bit the inside of her cheek. You're making a spectacle, she tried, chin high. I'm making clarity, I answered, watch me. The doors opened and we rode in silence. My pulse steadied while the numbers ticked down. Her reflection watched me with quick blinks. I focused on the phone recording, evidence wins. The lobby buzzed with small talk and impatient footsteps. I steered us to a corner near the cameras. 5 minutes, I said and showed the timer. After that I inform HR, I added choices. He arrived at a fast walk and stopped short. Tie loosened, eyes scanning exits, jaw clenched. He clocked the lens above us and adjusted tone. Let's discuss this privately, he offered too late. Expenses back to my card today, I said. And the thing now while I listen, I continued. Message her boss and step aside from her file. He glanced at her wrists, then back to me, calculating. You think you can pressure me, he tried. I think you should read the room and comply. I tapped the phone and the red dot blinked. He swallowed hard and nodded once, cracks forming. Text him, I told her and angled the screen. She typed a short message with her hands trembling. Effective immediately, I withdraw, she wrote. Show me, I said, and the word stood, no takebacks. He opened his banking app with stiff fingers. A transfer popped up with a note for reimbursement. I captured the confirmation on video without speaking. Next, I said and waited, there's always more. Email HR that you breached policy, I pushed. His mouth twitched and the vein in his neck jumped. Or I file a complaint with attachments, I added. He stared at the escalator like escape existed, cornered again. He typed slow at first, then fast under pressure. I watched every letter until the send icon flashed. I checked my inbox for the carbon copy. Arrived within seconds with his signature caught. She touched my sleeve and whispered for air. Finish the last part, I replied without looking. He frowned and shifted his weight like a boxer. Write a note to her family, I said, clean break. He balked and lifted his palms like peace. Short acknowledgement and apology, I clarified. No excuses and no future contact, I added. The message went out and my chest eased halfway. I ended the recording and started a new one. Now you leave this place and never text again. He angled his chin toward her with a question. She gave the tiniest shake, door closed. He turned toward the exit and paused at the turnstile. Delete the videos, he muttered with forced calm. File the apology with HR, I replied. He pushed through and vanished into street noise, out. She sagged against a column and wiped her eyes. I can't go home with you, she breathed. Home is gone, I answered without heat. Her gaze dropped to the carpet pattern, dead end. Your suitcase, I said, and waited for movement. She flinched and headed to the lift with small steps. I followed 2 paces back with the camera running. No one spoke as the door slid shut, thin air. Back in the room, she pulled the zipper fast. I unplugged nothing and touched nothing unnecessary. Keys, I asked and held out my palm. She handed them over and rubbed her wrist, finality. Where will you go? Came out despite myself. Not with him, she answered, almost pleading. Not my problem anymore, I said. Her mouth trembled and then set, message received. I walked to the threshold and waited for her. She lifted the bag and paused just an instant. Do I get a last word? She tried. You already used them, I replied, walk. We split at the hallway fork without turning back. I aimed for the stairs and the cooler air. Her steps faded toward the lift and the ding. I pressed record off and stared at my hands, steady now. Outside, my phone rang before I reached the curb. Unknown number pulsed with urgency and nerve. I answered and kept moving toward the street. Legal here, a new voice said, HR escalated already. End all recordings now, the voice came clipped through the line. No, I answered, walking toward the curb with purpose. Then meet me at our office in 20 minutes. Send it in writing, I said, and the email pinged. I grabbed a rideshare and kept the camera rolling. Legal forwarded a calendar invite with 2 names attached. The car stopped at the revolving door and my phone buzzed. Security waited with a list and a nervous glance, showtime. Upstairs, a glass room waited with blinds half closed. 2 people stood and gestured to the table without smiling. Place your phone here, one requested, palms open. I set it down face up but still live, your move. What outcome are you pursuing? The older one folded his arms. I hit play for 30 seconds and let the audio speak. The wrist grabbed the transfer, the apology, clean clips. They exchanged a look and dropped their voices, damage control. I want 4 things, I counted off with steady breath. Immediate separation from her projects, I started without flinching. Written acknowledgement of boundary violations, I continued, eyes on them. Full reimbursement confirmed earlier and a preservation order, nothing gets erased. They tried to slide an NDA across the table. Confidentiality limited to numbers and identities, I countered, fingers still. Not the facts and not the misconduct, I added. A quiet swallow, then a pen tapping. They adjusted quickly. Draft text appeared on the screen while I watched. I dictated the retention clause and named specific repositories. They resisted on the wording, and I held the line. Final sentence locked, then they pushed print commitment on paper. An assistant cracked the door and whispered about security downstairs. Your manager is returning to the building. Gee, she murmured. Suspend him now, I said and pointed to the email. They typed the notice and copied compliance, send it. My inbox chimed with the suspension letter in real time. I forwarded it to a separate account and to myself. Escort him out today, no solo conversations, I added. The younger lawyer nodded once and picked up the phone, done. They circled back to the footage with cautious words. Delete and we can move forward came out too smooth. Escrow with a third party instead, I answered. Release upon breach or retaliation, I finished, take it or fight. My phone lit with a new message from an unknown number. Stop or I'll sue, read the text with his initials. I slid the screen across the table without comment. They stared, then typed another note to the file, useful leverage. Do you want criminal charges? The older one asked finally. I shook my head and kept my voice even. I want distance and protection and written closure, I said. He pressed his lips together and signed twice, binding enough. A commotion rose in the hallway and heavy steps approached. The door opened and he tried to push inside. 2 guards blocked his shoulder and turned him around. He saw me and mouthed a threat, empty but loud. I stood and pocketed the signed packet with slow care. Email the countersigned copy by end of day, I said. Confirm the preservation with it in writing, I added. I walked out while he argued with badges, noise behind glass. The elevator dropped and my stomach steadied inch by inch. Street level hit and wind cut across my face. Another alert flashed from my bank with a reversal completed. Then a second alert, my joint account access revoked. I sprinted to the bank branch before the alert cooled. Queue full, I cut straight to the desk and planted IDs. Shared access vanished, I said, keeping my jaw tight. The clerk checked the screen, then called a supervisor, stall tactics. Freeze outbound transfers tied to that profile. We require the other party's approval, the supervisor tried. Then freeze my end and flag unusual activity, I pushed. He typed, paused, and slid a form, signature or nothing. I signed with a firm stroke and kept eye contact. Text me if anything moves 1 cent, I added. He toggled a setting and loaded my number twice. A printout thumped the counter, monitoring active within minutes. Outside, my phone lit with a muted group chat. A friend tossed a joke about office romances landing hard. Another dropped a meme with my initials tucked in. I took a screenshot and left the thread, no more charity. I dialed her sister and waited through 3 rings. Stop dragging this online came first, fast and sharp. Tell her to undo the bank stunt, I countered. She hung up and blocked the number, line drawn. I opened the carrier app and ordered a new SIM. 2-factor codes rerouted and backup email updated. Then I rotated passwords with random strings I would remember. Every change pinged like a lifeline, small control reclaimed. Legal emailed a draft settlement with placeholders still blank. I inserted a clause on third-party storage for the videos. I added a retaliation penalty with automatic escalation triggers. The reply went out with a read receipt, ball returned. Another buzz hit, building management wanted a quick talk. Multiple complaints from neighbors about shouting, their note read. Schedule a walkthrough, I texted and said an hour. If they tried penalties, I would need records, more paper armor. A rideshare carried me to the apartment with measured breaths. I spotted a moving van idling near our entrance. She was outside with 2 bags and a folded hanger. Her eyes flicked to me and then to the driver, decision pending. Leave the keys on the mat, I stayed on the sidewalk. Let me grab a few things, she replied, jaw set. Take clothing and toiletries only, I said. She stared at my hands like they held a verdict standoff. She walked past me without brushing shoulders. The driver pretended to study his clipboard and waited. I followed at distance down the hallway with camera ready. She paused at our door and looked back once, permission granted. Inside, I pointed to shelves I would pack later. She kept to the bedroom and zipped the duffel quickly. Laptop stays, I said and tapped the lid closed. She chewed her lip and nodded once, boundary enforced. Her phone lit up with his initials on the banner. She flipped it face down and kept moving. Answer it on speaker, I said without raising volume. She declined the call and shoved it away, silence heavier. The peephole darkened and someone knocked 3 short times. I checked the security app and saw my best friend. I cracked the door and he lifted both hands. Here to help, he offered with a weak grin, uninvited. Return the spare key you borrowed last winter. He blinked fast and glanced toward her suitcase. Now, I said and opened my palm for it. He fished through pockets and produced metal, trust withdrawn. He started a tangent about misunderstandings and adult choices. I cut him off and pointed to the stairwell. Respect the boundary or lose my number, I told him. His smile collapsed and he left without looking back, door finally shut. She wheeled the last bag to the front and paused. Where should I bring the rent portion, she asked. Transfer to my new account by tonight, I replied. Then erase my contact and don't test me, I finished clean cut. She slipped past me and the elevator swallowed her shape. I locked the deadbolt and leaned against solid wood. Messages poured in from unknown profiles with sudden opinions. I muted everything and opened a blank note, keep my mind straight. I walked room to room with measured steps and purpose. What stays got a piece of tape with a dot. What leaves went into a donation pile near the door. Every movement simplified the battlefield, less clutter to weaponize. The building manager arrived with a clipboard in tight posture. We toured the space while I recorded the conversation openly. He mentioned fines for noise and disturbances after quiet hours. I requested timestamps and camera references, proof before penalties. He relaxed when I stayed calm and factual. We set a follow-up inspection next week with witnesses. I signed a notice acknowledging the policy in writing. He handed me a copy and cleared his throat, truce for now. I sat at the table and opened the settlement again. I added a line about no contact radius within public events. I inserted a clause forbidding third-party messaging through relatives. The cursor blinked like a metronome, every beat a defense. A final ping landed from an unfamiliar legal firm. Anticipating claims of defamation, the subject warned. I dragged the mail into the shared case folder. Then I attached the apology clip and timestamps, let them swing. Night crept without fanfare while I built a checklist. Rent, utilities, storage unit, and mail forwarding in order. I wrote each item with square edges and short verbs. When the list ended, I opened the door, fresh air and risk. Knuckles rapped hard on my door 3 quick times. Police, open up, a second hit followed before I moved. I unlocked the chain and kept both hands visible. 2 uniforms stepped in while a bodycam blinked, complaint filed. Noise and threats reported at this address. Record this interaction, I answered and pointed to my phone. They glanced around and asked who else was inside. Only me, I said and held their stare, prove otherwise. They requested ID and incident details for the log. I gave the timeline in short beats without drift. I showed the legal emails and the reimbursement confirmations. The older officer nodded once, then lowered his shoulders, call dismissed. Do you want to file a counter report? Yes, I read the anonymous number from the warnings. They wrote the digits down and gave me a case number. Save that on your lock screen, one added, safety first. When they left, a new message flashed mid-screen. A login attempt from a city I had never visited. I killed sessions and forced a device reset fast. Then I added an app pin and moved on, no mercy. A courier pinged saying a package required my signature. I met him downstairs and signed with tense fingers. Inside the envelope lay a printed NDA unsigned. An attached sticky note read, drop your claims, cute threat. I scanned the document and marked 3 illegal parts. I forwarded everything to the council addresses on file. Attempted intimidation through courier, I wrote in the subject. A minute later came a terse reply, logged and retained. My calendar alert chimed for the storage unit appointment. I booked a rideshare and kept the case file open. In the office, I paid for a month in cash. The clerk slid a gate code across the counter, simple handoff. At the unit door, a familiar voice rose behind me. Her mother stood with folded arms and thin patience. You're ruining careers for a breakup, she flicked her eyes upward. Pick up your daughter, I answered, leave me out. She stepped closer and dropped her voice to a warning. You don't want lawsuits eating your savings. Already covered, I said and held the lock steady. She huffed once and walked back toward the elevator, line held. My phone vibrated mid-pack with a new calendar invite. An outside mediator requested a meeting for tomorrow morning. I replied with conditions and location on neutral ground. No phones on table, all notes shared, clear boundaries. Outside the gate, a sedan rolled slow beside me. It matched my speed through 2 blocks without passing. I turned right twice and it shadowed each move. I snapped a photo of the plate, then called non-emergency. Vehicle following me for several minutes. The dispatcher took the number and asked my direction. The car accelerated when I described it aloud. I turned into a grocery lot and watched it vanish, cowards run. Another ping hit, group chat requested a live meetup. A mutual friend booked a table at the corner bar. Bring proof or stay away, the message read. I grabbed the folder and went, this needed air. They were already seated with waters and tight faces. I placed the reimbursement screenshot in the center. Next, the suspension notice with timestamps and signatures. Anyone still guessing? I asked. Silence deepened. My former best friend tried a soft pivot. No need to scorch everything, he offered with a shrug. Return the borrowed money from last spring, I answered. He shifted in place and dug out crumpled bills, debt closed. Another friend opened her mouth and then stopped. Are you recording us? She asked, glancing at my phone. No, and I never needed to before today. Anyone distributing rumors is cut out, I finished, decision final. Someone muttered that I looked different under pressure. Different beats broken, I replied and stacked the pages. A chair scraped back hard and the group split. Half left without a goodbye, half stayed and stared. My screen lit again with an email from compliance. Account restored and flagged for attempted interference, it read. I exhaled and tapped a quick thank you. Then locked the phone and paid my share, scene over. On the walk home, a drizzle started without drama. A teenage kid skated past and almost clipped me. He turned his head and shouted, "Watch it, old man." I laughed once and kept moving, noise without damage. At my door, a new envelope waited on the mat. Inside, a prepaid phone buzzed with a single notification. Stop before you lose your job too, the text warned. I snapped the dip. ISIN 2 and dropped it, no reply. Another alert arrived from the courthouse portal online. My protective application cleared the first review within minutes. A clerk requested a sworn statement for tomorrow morning. I confirmed attendance and set an alarm, no lateness allowed. The building manager met me in the hallway mid-turn. Complaint withdrawn by the neighbor from earlier. Please send the written notice, I asked. He nodded and emailed the cleared ticket, paper trail intact. Inside the apartment, I laid a thin blanket on the floor. I ate an energy bar and drank water slow. My hands finally steadied without forcing the rhythm. A buzzing at the door cut that pause, unexpected visit. I checked the camera and saw the manager again. A maintenance worker stood beside him with a toolbox. Water shut off in 10 for pipe work, the manager said. 10 minutes works, I answered, then locked it twice. Before the valve turned, a last message rolled in. Funds sent for my share, her transfer line displayed. Then a second transfer hit for a larger amount. Memo field read damages paid, with 3 dots hanging. The prepaid cracked in my trash and my door shook again. Process server, a voice called through the wood with forced cheer. I opened just enough for the envelope to pass. Inside sat a hearing notice for a restraining request tomorrow at 9. I snapped a photo and mailed it to counsel. Bring original and show proof of harassment, the reply landed. I stacked the exhibits in a neat folder quickly. Camera screenshots, transfers, threats, everything sharp, no gaps allowed. An alarm pricked my wrist for the mediator session. I grabbed the folder and walked out without pausing. The rideshare crawled through traffic while I rehearsed lines. Only facts, only edges, no filler, stay cold. The mediator met me on the dot with practice calm. Ground rules, he started, palms open above the table. Everyone listens, everyone speaks in equal turns. I nodded once and kept my folder closed, first move matters. They entered together, legal on the left, him on the right. Her chair remained empty by quiet choice and heavy meaning. He scanned my face like measuring distance for a swing. I rested my hands flat on the table, steady posture. Remedies proposed, the mediator prompted like a referee. Zero communication, I began, eyes on the clock. Reimbursement verified and no contact expansion to digital. In exchange, I dropped public posts, I added my only concession. He scoffed and spread his fingers like a stage act. Your posts cost me reputation, he pressed with tight breath. Your actions cost me months, I countered, voice low. The mediator raised a palm between us, keep it clean. Their attorney slid a revision across the surface. A mutual non-disparagement with a stiff penalty per breach. I read every line and crossed two vague phrases. Specifics or we are done, I said, ink or exit. They balked until the mediator suggested time in a side room. I stayed put and tapped the table with my knuckle. When they returned, the draft had real numbers and triggers. I signed, then waited for their strokes, binding at last. My phone buzzed with a new voicemail from an unknown. A male voice rasped, stay home tomorrow if you're smart. I forwarded the file to the case inbox instantly. The mediator's brow lifted when he saw my face, new wrinkle. We closed the session and collected our copies. Outside, a reporter ambushed with a mic and bright smile. Quick comment on today's meeting, she asked, feet blocking. No comment, I answered and kept walking, no free soundbites. Back at the building, the landlord waited near the mailboxes. Noon move deadline was today, he reminded with clipped tone. I'm current and I'm not the tenant of record. He rubbed his temple and exhaled slow, complication he disliked. 30 days at current rate or vacate Friday. Put that in writing with your signature today. He typed it on his tablet and sent the notice. I opened it and replied accepted, stability for a week. Upstairs my phone rang from the courthouse clerk. Bring 2 copies of everything for the judge. I'll be early, I promised, already printing the list. She paused and wished me luck, human for a beat. A neighbor knocked with a tentative knuckle and worried eyes. Cars circled our block twice, she whispered at my door. I stepped into the hall and peered down both ways. Empty corridor, quiet elevator, tension coiling, watched the night. I set my laptop on a crate and rehearsed testimony. Dates, times, crosschecks, who witnessed, who signed. I timed my statements to fit under 5 minutes. Short sentences, strong bones, no fluff, court favors clean. At dusk my sister's name finally flashed and held. I heard pieces, she began, voice thin and careful. I will send the full folder tonight, I replied. Pick your side after you read it, I said, line drawn. Silence stretched, then she breathed. D out through her nose. I'll be there tomorrow on the bench, came steady. Don't speak to anyone outside counsel, I warned. Understood, she answered and hung up, small anchor. Another alert lit the screen from compliance again. Termination processed, the subject read with brutal clarity. An attachment showed badge deactivated and laptop reclaimed. My shoulders loosened, one notch, one door shut, another waiting. A message from her landed while I filled a water bottle. No more lawyers, please, the text pleaded with clipped urgency. Meet in public for 10 minutes, she added. Only with the mediator present, I replied, no solo scenes. She sent 3 dots and then nothing for a minute. Then a single word arrived, fine. I gave a place with cameras and a central bench. 10 minutes, no contact, exchange only, I wrote, tight box. I reached early and watched the plaza flow around me. She approached with slow steps and an envelope in hand. She stopped 2 paces away and set it on the seat. I signed my affidavit, she said, fingers shaking, new data. I took the envelope without brushing skin. The paper listed her statement in crisp lines. Admitted meetings, transactions, pressure, and breach of conduct. At the bottom, a notary seal pressed hard, useful weight. I'm leaving town for a while, she blinked fast and swallowed. Do that, I answered, eyes on the seal. She nodded once and walked away without turning. I watched until she merged into the crowd, chapter closing. Back home, I scanned the affidavit into the binder. I listed it as Exhibit G and marked the date. I copied it to a drive and encrypted the archive. Then I emailed counsel with a simple line, new sworn statement. Night stretched and I checked the peephole twice. My phone rested face down on the table. A heavy thud rattled the door like a shoulder test. I recorded a timestamp and texted the precinct, pattern building. Minutes later, a patrol car rolled by the street. I met the officers at the entrance with the log. They took photos of the scuff near the hinge. Tomorrow we'll add extra passes, one offered, visible deterrent. I lay on the blanket and set 3 alarms. One for waking, one for travel, one for backup. I placed the folder inside my backpack and locked it. Sleep came in shards until the first buzz, court day. I arrived early and cleared security with my packet. The clerk checked the list and handed me a number. I sat near the front and counted doors. Every step echoed like a countdown, my turn next. Her chair remained empty when the clerk called names. His name appeared on the screen beside mine. He walked in with a new lawyer and a tight jaw. We faced forward and waited for the judge, cold room. The judge entered and scanned the docket quickly. Preliminary protective request, he read in a neutral rhythm. He asked for concise openings with no theatrics. I stood and delivered the spine, timeline, threats, proof. Their lawyer tried to narrow the scope with clever phrasing. I pointed to the affidavit and the recorded messages. I handed up the courier note and the voicemail transcript. The judge read, asked 2 questions, and marked his notes, calm gravity. Temporary order granted until full hearing, he concluded. Radius restrictions and electronic contact prohibited, he added. Court set the next date 2 weeks from today. The gavel tapped once like a seatbelt, secured for now. Outside the courtroom I exhaled and leaned on stone. My sister appeared with a coffee and fierce eyes. She squeezed my shoulder twice and kept her words short. I'm proud of you, she whispered, then wiped her cheek. We walked to the exit and my phone vibrated again. A final email from HR confirmed permanent separation. Benefits outlined, investigations closed, and training announced. I forwarded it to myself and the mediator, story documented. On the sidewalk, the same reporter hovered at distance. She caught my glance and lifted her microphone half an inch. I shook my head and kept moving through the crowd. Some stories earn oxygen later, today belongs to quiet. Back at the apartment, I opened every window latch. Air moved through the rooms and carried the day out. I folded the blanket and set it by the pack. Then I typed 8 words into a fresh note, done, heartbroken, still standing, no one yet.